Should you have a high-end rental? That is the question for today. Well, I guess it's personal choice, but here's kind of how I see things. So let's take into account a $1 million property, which will probably rent somewhere between $4,000 to $7,000, depending on the area, right? So a lot of people see that $4,000 to $7,000 and say, "Hey, that's that's a pretty good number," and it is a good number. But here's kind of the downsides, right? With the property, honestly, houses that are worth over 250, it's just really hard to, you get to a point where the rent doesn't keep up with the cost of the house, and the cost of the house just keeps going up, and the rent just like goes up slowly and slowly. So that really happens on, at least here in my market, it really happens on properties probably after, I don't know, like 3 to 4, maybe $500,000, where the rent amount just doesn't keep up with the value, and you can't even get like a 1% rule going. But the problem with big, more expensive properties like $1 million properties is you have a high cost of maintenance, right? You have high taxes, high insurance, just high capital expenditures overall, right? So you're not getting very much cash flow on a monthly, yearly basis, right? So you have terrible returns. So then why do people hold on to these things? And I think it's probably a two factors, right? One is the ego, where people are like, "Oh, I have a $1 million house and blah blah blah," right? Which, whatever, right? You could probably sell that $1 million house and stroke your ego harder with a big boat or something, right? But anyway, the second would be they can't sell it, right? Because if they're actually in real estate investing and wanting to invest, that house would not make sense, right? They would sell for $800,000 or $900,000, just get rid of it and get into something better, where they're, even though they lost that $200,000, let's say, they'd be making way more cash flow on the back end just buying something that makes sense, right? So for example, compare it to, let's say, I don't know, maybe you sell that $1 million house, get your mill for it, and you buy 10 houses for $100K. And for those 10 houses, maybe you're getting $1,200 a month. And that's almost double the amount you're getting in cash flow or in, rent collections a month. So you'd be at like $12,000 a month in rent collections off of 10 houses. So that is much, much better. And to take it a step further, imagine if, I don't know, you bought 20 units for $50K a unit, right? Making $800 a month. So that would set you at like $16,000 a month in rent collection, right? So compared to what, right, your million can be making you either, let's just $4,000 to $7,000, or your million could be making you 12, or your million could be making you 16K. So it just depends on your investment style and what you're going after. But in my opinion, I think those very expensive houses don't really make sense. Houses in the higher echelon usually don't make sense. A lot of times people think that maybe those people will take care of the property better. They might, but I don't think it's worth, the money lost in cash flow to get that better tenant, because you can get just as great of a tenant in a $50,000 unit as you would get in one of these $1 million properties, right? It's just all about finding good tenants. Screening good tenants is really what it's all about, is just screening those tenants to make sure that you are finding that good tenant that is going to take care of the property, is going to pay the rent, and is going to do all that. So in summary, if you have one of those super expensive properties, to me it doesn't make sense because of the cash flow, right? That money can be applied to 10 houses or 20 units, or maybe even 20 houses at $50K a piece, and you'd be making much more money on your million than you would, I was trying to think, on your money, right, than you would otherwise just holding one asset. And I guess the one thing that, right, The other big thing is your market for a tenant that lives in that house is very, very small compared to your market that would live in 10 houses that are 100K. That's literally the majority of population. And same thing with the 50K unit, right? So, and your vacancy, if your one tenant moves out of your $1 million house, is zero, and it's going to take you a while to find a new tenant for that house, right? Whereas when you have 10 properties, it's not a big deal if one person moves out because you still got 9 paying. Same thing with 20, right? It's not a big deal if one person moves out of 20 because you got 19 others paying. So it doesn't really affect you as much as one tenant leaving out of one property. So my advice would be kind of stay away from those bigger properties. They don't make sense, but I do understand why some people end up having those rentals just because maybe they lived in the house and they don't want to sell it. They're emotionally attached, or maybe they just can't sell it because it's a harder property to sell in that market maybe. So who knows? But hopefully this video helped, and I hope if you have any questions, you reach out to me. I'd be glad to help anytime. Have a great day. Wah, wah, wah.